Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to another action figure review, and today we'll be taking a look at the Monsterarts Godzilla 2000. Now, this version of Godzilla comes from the 2000 film Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, which I think it's okay. I like the premise where it's like a hypothetical, like, what if Godzilla didn't die in the original 1954 film and just continue to wreak havoc on Japan? I think that's a cool concept. I think the music is pretty good. I think it's cool that they brought back the Mega Nulon, and it has some cool moments. That's all I really have to say. It's a very whatever movie. It's not bad, it's still very watchable. You know, like, it doesn't do anything, like, inherently wrong, but it also doesn't really do anything to wow me, to really, like, invest me. The story is still, like, a little forgettable, and it's very whatever. If you've seen Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, then you've seen this movie, just not as good. Granted, this movie came first, so make of that as you will. But either way, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus isn't one of my favorites, but it's still watchable. But I digress. So, yeah, I don't really have a lot else to say, so let's just get right into this. Unlike with the movie Monster Series figures, this figure has no tag or no other accessory to speak of whatsoever, so we're just going to jump right into the paint. And the painting on this figure, I think looks good, but I would have done some things a little differently. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a closer look. So right off the bat, the entirety of this figure is casted in this black coloration, which is what we usually expect with Godzilla. The thing is, with Godzilla's design in Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, it did have like a bit of like a greenish hue to it, and this figure doesn't really have that, which it's not really the end of the world. You know, like, it still looks nice, and it could pass as just Godzilla 2000 Millennium, but, you know, like, if they're gonna label this figure as, like, Godzilla 2000 from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, I'd rather just have a more, like, accurate paint job to that movie, but that's just me. You know, it still looks nice, which is something I want to point out. The dorsal plates here are painted very nicely. I really like the deep shade of purples they used here, and it eases into the black at the center of the dorsal plates really nicely. And this purplish coloration continues all the way to the end of the tail here, which I think looks really nice. And the dorsal plates, I think, look good. The toenails and fingernails here are going to be painted tan with a brown finish to them, and I think the nails here look a little sloppy. I'm not going to lie. They don't look terrible, you know, like, the toenails, like, they don't look the worst, but, like, mostly with the fingernails, I feel like there's just a bit too much there. And even with the teeth, like, I think they're, like, too much of, like, a dark brown. If they were, like, a little brighter, I think it would have looked nicer, the teeth here, but, yeah, they just look... It could look better, in my opinion, but I digress. The inside of the mouth, we have a nice dark pinkish coloration with a nice glossy finish. Lastly, the eyes here are painted white with brown pupils. And that's pretty much it for the painting on this figure. And overall, the painting looks nice, but, like, it's not one-to-one with the movie, which in itself isn't inherently bad, but, like, I would have preferred something a little more closer. Like, this is branded as Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. I would have preferred this figure to have, like, a little bit of, like, a greenish hue to it, and maybe clean up the nails and teeth a little bit. But overall, the painting still looks nice. It still looks presentable, and I'm still happy with it. You know, so the painting on this figure, I'd say, gets 3/4 of a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the articulation. And the articulation on this figure, I think, is very solid. So let's take a closer look. So starting off at the head here, the mouth can open like so and close. Which, I mean, that's, you know, like, pretty basic. The tongue, I don't know if it can move or not. Like, it moves a little bit, but I don't know if it can, like, hold a pose, like, specifically. But I digress. You can still get some movement in the tongue, just not a whole lot. The base of the head here is on a ball joint. The base of the neck here is on a ball joint as well. And the thing that's really interesting here is that if you pull the head, not too hard, you don't want to break this figure, but if, like, you pull the head a little bit, like, the neck can extend, so you can get, like, more, like, movements. And I think that's pretty neat. They didn't have to do that, you know, but they did, and that's neat. Granted, on mine, this joint here feels a little loose, But it still holds a pose fine enough. But still, it's just one thing that I think is pretty interesting. The shoulders here are on ball joints. They can move outwards like so. The elbows can bend like so. The wrists are on very limited ball joints, so they can move like so. We have an ab crunch, nothing too crazy, but a little bit of an ab crunch there. The thighs here are on ball joints, so they can kick forward about that much, and backwards about that much. We have a bend in the knees here. The ankles are on ball joints, so they can move in any direction you'd like. And the tail here is filled with segmented ball joints. And, oh, well, that just popped off. But the joints here feel very tight. You know, they can hold a pose very nicely. They feel, again, minus this part of the tail popping off, like, can move very nicely. And yeah, the tail here just has a lot of articulation, and I think that's really cool. And it feels good, too. I mean, this bit, that could be a little tighter, but everything else feels very nice. So, yeah. That's pretty much it for the articulation on this figure. And overall, the articulation on this figure, I think, is very solid. So the articulation here, I'd say gets a pass. Now, we're going to take a look at the sculpt. And the sculpting on this figure, I think, looks good. But one thing I want to talk about just really quickly. The person who sculpted this figure was Yuji Sakai, who also sculpted the original design for Godzilla 2000. You know, I'm not going to go into, like, behind-the-scenes detail of, like, why that design looks different from, like, the final design or anything like that. Because, like, I have a rough idea of what happened, but I feel like I'd miss, like, a lot of, like, key points. And, you know, I don't want to risk, like, spreading misinformation. You know, I'm sure, like, you know, we could find it on, like, Wikizilla or something like that, where, like, it talks about, like, what happened behind the scenes, you know. But if you know, then there is something about, like, this figure that is very ironic. And then I'll leave it at that. But the sculpting on this figure, for the most part, like I said, looks good. A couple of gaps in the dorsal plates, like right here. You know, this dorsal plate here is just kind of there. And it's really noticeable when Godzilla looks down. Like, there's just a really big gap there, and it's pretty distracting, I'm not going to lie. And even here, there's a little bit of a gap. Like, I get why that's there. They don't want, like, these two dorsal plates to rub against each other. You know, that makes sense. But it's still, like, there is a gap there, and it does look a little distracting. The other negative I have here, or not really a negative, it's more of a nitpick. But the neck here is a little bit, like, too thin compared to, like, the actual movie design. Now, someone pointed this out on Twitter, and a lot of people were jumping on them saying, oh, it's supposed to be stylistic. It's supposed to be stylistic. You know, to me, that just sounds like cope, if I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Like, don't get, like, this doesn't bother me, right? I still think, like, the sculpting here looks good. Don't get me wrong. But, like, a lot of people who buy SH Monsterarts figures, I feel like when people, like, point out, like, you know, inaccuracies with, like, the sculpting, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's supposed to be stylized. Like with the SH Monsterarts King Ghidorah 2019 or the SH Monsterarts Godzilla 2014, you know, those two figures look drastically different from how, you know, they looked in their respective movies. And again, people just pass that off as just, it's stylistic. It's not supposed to be accurate, which again, to me feels like cope. Because when I think of a stylized figure, I think of something like a Marmot figure. Or I think of like one of those like Bandai movie monster series like repaints that they sell for like the Godzilla VR like thing, whatever it's called. You know, like I think of stuff like that. You know, this is just like, to me, and I mean no disrespect towards Yuji Sakai or anyone who like sculpts these figures, but like to me, it just comes off as just like, you know, kind of like getting it wrong, if I'm being honest. And they're saying that like they're paying very close attention to like the behind the scenes, like, you know, how the suits actually look, but like the suit did not have a skinny neck like this. You know, and again, like this figure, again, I think the sculpting looks good, but I just want to point out that like, you know, other companies like Hiya Toys, they are making very accurate figures, and they're actually also listening to feedback. I remember when they first revealed their Godzilla 2002, I remember a lot of people were very dissatisfied with how the head looked, and Hiya Toys actually listened to that feedback, and they said, you know what? We're going to tweak the head a little bit. We're going to make it more film accurate, and now it actually looks really good, And you don't get that with SH Monsterarts, like, people mention how, oh, this part isn't accurate, or, oh, this part could have been done better, and they do nothing to address those complaints. And I just think that's a little frustrating. Just something I just want to get off my chest. The sculpting here, it still looks great. The head, I think, captures the likeness of Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus and or Godzilla 2000 Millennium very nicely. The proportions here, besides the neck and the gaps in the dorsal plates, like, everything here looks great. And overall, the sculpting here does look nice, but I do want to point out that, I wish it was a little more accurate. And it is possible, even for this line. The SH Monsterarts Gamera 2023, that is, like, one-to-one how Gamera looked sculpt-wise. Like, there is, like, it's perfect, right? And I just don't understand why they can't do that for figures like this. Now, you could say, like, oh, Gamera Rebirth had, like, used a CGI model, so it was easier to just take that model and turn it into a figure, where this, they had to, like, look at, like, promotional stills and stuff like that, but again, I think the sculpting could have been a little more accurate. Again, as is, it still looks good, but I think it could have looked a little more accurate, but I digress. Anyway, the sculpting on this figure, while it's not perfect, I still like it. So overall, I'd say the sculpting on this figure gets 3/4 of a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the detailing, and the detailing on this figure, I think, looks very good. So let's take a closer look. Starting off with the head here, we can see all the scales and all of, like, the ridges and, like, the face here and everything like that is detailed very nicely. Everything here is very nicely defined. And even the inside of the mouth here has a lot of really nice detailing, like at the roof of the mouth there, and so on. I think that looks really good. The front of the figure, a lot of really nice scaling, and all of, like, the creases and all of, like, the folds and everything like that, gives off, like, a guy in a suit feel, and I like that. Not as much as, like, other figures I've seen, but still, like, what we have here, like, it looks nice, but still, a lot of really nice scaling, and a lot of really nice detailing. You're, like, especially here, like, the way these just, like, jut out. I know that's part of the design, but still, I think that looks really nice. And again, just a lot of really nice detailing, like, on the arms here, on the legs. Just a lot of really nice scaling, and a lot of nice, like, musculature here, too. And I like that a lot. Going to the tail here, again, just a lot of really nice scaling. Everything here is detailed very nicely. All the creases and everything look very good. And lastly, the dorsal plates are going to be detailed very nicely as well. Looking more rough towards the center, but smoothening out, like, once you get to, like, the edges here. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the detailing. Overall, the detailing on this figure, I think, looks very good. So the detailing here, I'd say, definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll do some size comparisons. To start, here we have the SH Monsterarts Godzilla 2000, the special color version. Here we have the Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla 2000, version 2.0. Here we have the original Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla 2000, the 2017 release, not like the original. And of course, here we have Dr. Billy Grant, and here we have some hand sanitizer. So at the end of the day, should you get this figure? Despite its shortcomings, I still really like this figure. It's not as movie accurate as I'd like it to be, but it still looks nice. I think the painting, minus the nails and teeth, looks great. The articulation, I think, is really good. The sculpting is great. The detailing is great. Everything about this figure is great. It's still a nice figure. I just would have preferred if it was a little more movie accurate, especially for that price tag. Speaking of price tags, I ordered this guy from HobbyLink Japan, which, if you watched last week's video, then I think you know where this is going. So MSRP before shipping was $70, which I think is fair as far as like SH Monster Arts figures go. If you're going to release like an SH Monster Arts like Godzilla figure and have it come with no accessories whatsoever, then having it be like $70 is like a really fair asking price, you know? But then it comes to shipping. Now, again, I've mentioned this before, but, the tariffs are making things more expensive, making things harder to import. So the tariff fees and everything like that made the shipping, for me, I had to pay like a little over $80. So this $70 figure turned into an almost $160 figure, which, fun fact, is actually more expensive than the US distribution. So you're better off waiting for the US release of this figure. But fortunately, there is the US distribution of this figure. With the movie Monster Series line, like, I don't want to say it's like exclusive to Japan, but if you want like the newer figures from that line, then you are going to have to import them and pay like, expensive like tariff and shipping fees, which, yeah, that's a lot. But with SH Monster Arts, there usually is like a really good like US distribution. So you can pre-order this guy from Big Bad Toy Store. You can pre-order this figure from the US Godzilla store. Awesome Collector used to be my go-to as far as like SH Monster Arts like, figures go. Lately, they have been really quiet. And I'm sure it's because of the whole tariff situation. But I pre-ordered the SH Monster Arts Anguirus 1972. And other retailers got that figure in like June, July. It's October. And I am still waiting on this figure. As of me recording this, I think it would be really funny if, after I uploaded this, I'd get like the shipping notification saying like, oh, your figure's on the way. That'd be a little funny, but as of me recording this, today is October 5th, and I have still received no word as far as like my SH Monster Arts Anguirus 1972. So just be mindful of that. But either way, again, this is a nice figure. I just wish it was a little more movie accurate, but I digress. Anyway, that is it for today. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, Zack out.